Michael Popok, Legal AF, Jack Smith and his team continue to try to crack the nut and split the atom and prove that Donald Trump had criminal intent. And they're trying to do that by getting in, doing a craniectomy, get inside the brain of Donald Trump to figure out what he knew, when he knew it about voter integrity. And when that switch flipped and he started to talk about fraud, false ballots, ballot stuffing, software that flipped Trump votes to Biden and the like. And they're trying to set up that timeline to show basically that Donald Trump is telling a lie when he tells people that he truly believes there was voter fraud. He still does it to this day. But the timeline, the knew or should have known timeline, the willful blindness timeline, because you're not allowed under the law to stick your head in the sand. It's the ostrich theory. Put your fingers in your ears and cover your eyes and exclude out and force out all facts that are being presented to you that don't fit your theory, because you want to claim that there's voter fraud when there isn't. And the more data points that Jack Smith can put together to show that Donald Trump is full of crap and knew or should have known that the vote was secure and that this big lie about steal the vote was nothing more than that in order to undermine the integrity of the voting system and cling to power. And there's a renewed focus, or a new focus that's being reported by CNN, of a February of 2020 Oval Office meeting involving Donald Trump and senior White House officials and other agency officials talking about voter integrity. This is February, right? This is several months before the November election. And according to witnesses that have testified to Jack Smith, and I'm going to give you a list of people I think have given that testimony that would have been in a meeting like this one, Donald Trump was so impressed and so happy with the secured integrity information he was getting about the election. The use of paper ballots, the use of audit trails, the use of security audits. He was so happy about that he wanted the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI to take to the airwaves and give a press conference to assure the American people that the election was going to be fair and that its integrity was going to be preserved, right? So what happened? That's February. By April, Donald Trump is taken to the airwaves spouting off about Venezuelan hardware and software that's flipping hundreds of thousands of votes for Trump to Biden and deleting hundreds of thousands of votes for Donald Trump. So what happened? Did he just go crazy? Or is it all a lie and he's burying his head in the sand because he knows from his cybersecurity head, right, Chris Krebs, to his Department of Homeland Security head at the time, Ken Cuccinelli, right? To his head of the FBI, Chris Wray, to his then chief of staff that would have been in the room, Mark Meadows, cooperating with Jack Smith, Pat Cipollone, White House counsel, cooperating with Jack Smith, Eric Hirschman, deputy White House counsel, cooperating with Jack Smith, Cassidy Hutchinson, right-hand aide to Mark Meadows, cooperating with Jack Smith. I am sure that a combination of those people are cooperating with Jack Smith as he gets to the bottom. Is how did the train jump the tracks? Sorry about that. I almost said trump the tracks. How did the train jump the tracks in Donald Trump's mind and getting inside that mens rea, right? That criminal mind, that criminal intent. How did he go in February from wanting to blow a horn from the top of the White House and tell everybody how secure his elections were going to be, right? The most secure. And he went from that to April to getting on his social media talking about hundreds of thousands, 941,000, so precise, yet so nuts, deleted votes for Trump. 435,000 votes that got flipped, that were for Trump, got flipped to Biden by Venezuelan and Italian software. Now, I know who promoted these crazy crackpot conspiracy theories. Sidney Powell, right? Pillow guy, Overstock.com guy, or as I like to call him, Overthrow.com guy. These were his advisors. These were the people that were pouring poison into his ear, but he's the criminal, right? You know, you don't get to say, well, I followed, you know, Mike Lindell, pillow guy. Sidney Powell, she had a law degree, you know. You don't go from it's the most, secure, protected election, and you want the FBI, the DHS to go to the airwaves and tell people that, to telling people the only reason you lost is millions of votes for you were taken away illegally and by false means. So the Department of Justice obviously believes they have to explain this to a jury. And these are data points. These are pieces of the puzzle they're going to put in front of the jury to show that he's faking it, right? He's continuing to talk about it because he knows he can't slip anymore. He already had one slip when he said to his director of communications, who's now a host on The View, and he said to her, Alyssa Farah, can you believe I lost to this effing guy? Talking about Joe Biden. We haven't heard that since because he knows that was terrible. It's true, but it's terrible for his case and his argument that, you know, he's too crazy and nuts and a believer of the fraud to have committed a crime. And this is the nut that Jack Smith literally has to crack, right? Donald Trump's the nut. And this is the way that prosecutors are going to do it one by one, focusing on February of 2020 meetings. Let me just remind everybody that the Stop the Steal sloganeering and the approach that the Republicans would challenge the integrity of the election and the vote process no matter what predated COVID in 2019, 2020. If you go back and Google, you will find Roger Stone, right, who learned all of his dirty tricks working for Tricky Dick Nixon, talking about Stop the Steal in 2017 and 2018 before the election. What election is being stolen when you're not even in election season yet, right? 2 years or more before the election, the drumbeat of Stop the Steal started. Donald Trump got in. We may not like it, but he got in 2018. So if anybody stole the election, I guess it was Donald Trump. Now come 2020, February, Donald Trump's on board with this. This is going to be a fair election. We don't have a voter integrity problem. We've never had a voter integrity problem. Let me repeat that. In the history of elections in America, our elections, especially compared to the rest of the world, are so secure. I'm not saying they're fraud-free. There's no election system that's fraud-free. But so de minimis into the 0.001 percentile of voter fraud. Voter fraud running everything from double voting, purposely voting outside your precinct, voting your dead mother-in-law's ballot in a mail-in, whatever. But if you add all that up, it's literally 0.001%. It's never enough to affect the outcome of an election. Not one where Joe Biden won by over 7 million popular vote. 2,000, 3,000 votes out of a couple 100 million cast. It's not going to make a difference, right? It's like spitting into the rain. And so Donald Trump knows better. He was told better by experts in his own administration at a group meeting in February. He should have gone into the election believing that, but that doesn't help him. That storyline, that narrative doesn't help Donald Trump cling to power and stop the peaceful transfer. He's got to attack the election system. So we run the timeline back and the time machine back, and that is what we're watching Jack Smith do. And he's getting all the people that were in rooms like the February 2020 White House meeting, Mark Meadows, Ken Cuccinelli, Pat Cipollone, Pat Philbin, I'm sure, Mark Meadows' assistant, Cassidy Hutchinson, Chris Wray, the FBI. And he's saying to them, let's talk about that meeting in which Donald Trump was crowing about how secure the elections were. Well, what happened 8 weeks later when he started tweeting about 1 million deleted or flipped votes, or went on national television to say this?
Mail ballots, they cheat, okay? People cheat. Mail ballots are a very dangerous thing for this country because they're cheaters. They go and collect them. They're fraudulent in many cases.
Right? Just because states trying to cope with COVID came up with more approachable mail in and drop off ballot requirements so we could have an election during a pandemic and people wouldn't stay home and give up their constitutional right to vote. There is no important constitutional right in America. If you could only have one, right? If you could only have one of what's guaranteed you by the Constitution, you would take voting. So the voting right is first among equals in the Bill of Rights and in the Constitution, right? And so we have to make sure that people are able to exercise it, even in a pandemic, even in a bubonic plague that's sweeping America. People have to vote because that's our system of government. We don't delay things, right? It's one thing to cancel a baseball game, a Saturday Night Live, because of 9/11. It's another thing to push off the vote and the national election and the exercise of the preeminent voting right and right under our Constitution. This is what Jack Smith is doing. This is why we've been so patient over the last 9 months as he develops his case and continues to try to crack that nut and split that atom and prove criminal intent by Donald Trump. I'm going to follow all of these developments as I find out about them, and then I report them to you right here in hot takes just like this one in only one place. And you knew that. It's Legal AF and the MeidasTouch Network on the YouTube channel. You can find me, slide over to playlists. You can find the Popok playlist. They'll give you all my hot takes. Every Wednesday and Saturday, I co-anchor Legal AF, the leading podcast at the intersection of U.S. law and politics. You get it on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel if you want to watch us do it. You want to listen to us. It's everywhere podcasts are found, every platform you can find. You can follow me on all things social media. I'll keep you up to speed and up to date at MS Popok, including on Threads. I'm Michael Popok, Legal AF reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.